steeper path, the climb I choose, leaving comfort, nothing to lose. Through shadow trails and rocky ground, my purpose clear, my meaning found. Each step I take brings strength anew. Challenges faced, resilience grew. A journey tough, but richly sweet, where soul and life's alignment meet. At peaks ahead, the vision clear, my greatest goals becoming near. The steeper path, though hard and slow, is where my truest self will grow. The steeper path.
It's one of the things I like so much about music. It's like you can't force that stuff. You can get in a flow if you just think about present. You know, what's the next note? Where does this want to go? And like so many things in life, you can apply that to other aspects of your life. You know, just try to be present. What's the next word? What's the next thought?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the musical journey thing. I think one of the coolest things that I learned about playing music is not learning to play it yourself, but learning to play it with others, because it requires you to be so hyper in the moment and present, and to be reading the other musicians to see like, where are you going next? Are you going to change keys? Oh shit, you just changed keys. Oh my God, now I have to quickly extrapolate in my head the chord family, you know, like now I got to stay with you, and you just went to B flat. Oh shit, what's in the B flat chord family? I got to remember my formula, you know, and like all this stuff is happening in real time. You cannot wing it.
Yeah.
Right. Or you are completely out of key. Right. And I love that hyper presence thing. And I think back to our work lives, you know, like at places like Microsoft, where you woke up every day and every half an hour for 8 to 10 hours was booked.
Yes.
With a meeting, with a thing, right? And I'm like, how did I ever, I know I didn't operate at my best, but how did I ever even operate in a world of back-to-back task switching and context switching and rapid fire doing, you know?
I have opinions.
Yeah. Tell me.
I think it's a technology, right? It's you solve something with technology, increases reliance on it, speeds things up, it creates efficiencies, but also creates complexity, and it starts this flywheel. And so you can do more, but you're put more and more into a lane. So you rely on the email, then you rely on, you know, now AI. It's just completely blown up, because it's like, you know, at the end of the day, the thing that worries me, one of the things that worries me about AI is that, you know, writing, like what you just got done, this big journey, writing your book. I can't imagine. I can kind of imagine, but I haven't done it. You know, it's like how difficult it is to kind of focus that, create the story arc, the editing, everything else. And now it's so easy. It's like, hey, I've got this problem. Let me ask ChatGPT to help me draft this. And there's a lot of power in that. And it's good. It helps move things forward. You can kind of focus on your comfort zone, but at some time it's just chipping away at these core skills and increasing a reliance. And so how long is it, especially with people just coming into the industry?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where they didn't experience, like we did, decades of, you know, the grind and trying to find creative solutions to very complicated problems, critical thinking. Those are the things that concern me. It's how are they going to cope?
I'm with you. It is like one of the reasons I was attracted to wanting to work in technology is because I saw that it's a universal truth that we get better when we build it right, in that it supports and augments humanity in some way to make our quality of life better, right?
Yes.
So we had fire, and fire kept us from getting sick from foodborne disease and parasites and all that stuff that was awful, right? We had wheels, which enabled us to move heavier things further than our bodies could carry. We had, swords or blades to cut things, trees, food, each other, like there were always these things that were created that somehow were these big step functions that augmented humanity. And when I moved to California in 1995, I still felt like we were there. Like the PC, the Mac, the internet, it was all still kind of in the realm of let's build things that make humans better, right?
Yes.
The Mac is a tool for creatives. The PC was a tool for business people to do things more efficiently, faster. And then somewhere along the way, it turned into like the crutch. And I think that's the place where I fell out of love with it, where it was like, now you don't need friends. We'll find them for you. You don't need to call people and talk to them. We'll just send their pictures out for them to look at them and hit a button to say that they care about you,
I couldn't agree more. I think, going back to this idea that when you solve something with technology, it creates new problems, which is great for business.
Right.
But those problems didn't exist if you hadn't solved the first thing with technology. So it's like email versus handwriting things. It's like you didn't have the reply all issue, right? Like that wasn't a thing. So it gives opportunity to businesses. But as this flywheel goes, I believe the problems you're solving are getting further away from supporting the human condition, giving value back to humans, which is, to your point, we all get up in the morning like, how can I solve something that's going to help myself, but others? Yeah. That's the ultimate. And I think it's getting harder, especially in business, to do that. And I think that's one of the things that is kind of taking purpose away from people, making us feel like it's harder to kind of carve out something. And that's why I'm such a big fan of creativity. It's, those things that come from inside you can contribute out that, at least today, we could get into that debate. There's all the AI generative AI. And that's actually a really hot topic in music right now. I'm both concerned and not concerned, because I think, when you have the easy button in life, this goes to the core part of your book, right? It's, we're wired for the couch, conserve energy, do it the easiest way that you can.
Right.
But that doesn't give us purpose. We need conflict. We need to overcome things. We need that friction. And so if there's an easy button to create an amazing piece of music and everybody can do it, what's the incentive? Nobody wants to do it then. It's, plus there's no incentive. Thing.
Yeah. I still think that there is, again, we're still in the very, very early steps of this journey with AI. Yeah. There is still glimmers. And again, like you said, it's all about where did you come into AI in your personal growth journey?
Yeah.
I see very helpful and useful ways that AI can be used to make you better at everything. Right?
Agreed.
Better at writing, better at making music, better at, managing your feelings, whatever it is. There's lots of ways to do it, but I feel like it's like a car. We don't give a kid a car at 12, right? We don't give them a beer at 12 because it's like, there's a developmental cliff in the brain that needs to be reached before that thing can be safely used by that person, right? Yeah. And I feel like AI, and I know nobody wants to hear this in Silicon Valley at all, but needs to have an age limit before you're allowed to touch it. Because in my hands and in your hands, in our 50s, where we've already developed all these muscles and skills, we can see it and go, okay, I'm going to write a piece of writing, and I want you to look at my grammar. I want you to look at my sentence structure. I want you to push and pull with me on my logic. Do I have holes in it? But we already knew how to write before we used it and asked it for that. If we, and then so it's like you were saying, this AI native generation. We've had 2 generations now of digital natives with, Gen Y, Gen Z, and now a new generation coming into this that are going to be AI natives. Right? They haven't had the brain development. So you're giving them a car when they're like 9 years old.
I think it's one of those paradoxes that exists with AI, because it's, to some degree, it's training on the corpus of everything that exists. And to a big degree, then when you look at big tech especially, we're being essentially programmed. We're being led down a path. So if you come in before you've developed your own thinking on something, because the development doesn't mean that thing isn't going to be there guiding you down a path, which is, and I don't know how we get around that. It's.
Yeah. I think there first has to be an acknowledgement that this is a real thing, that this is an issue, that, we have something here that we need to pay attention to and need to have a discussion about, to hit the pause button on. And I don't think business right now, especially with the billions of dollars of investment that's pouring into this, that wants to see returns quickly and in large numbers, has the, I don't know what the right word here is. I was going to say the maturity, the sense of responsibility, the perspective to say, hey, y'all, we need to put the pause button on a little bit of this stuff just before we go past a point of no return.
Yeah. Right? If we haven't already.
Yeah. And that's arguable.
It's complicated, right?
It is.
The world's moving quicker. And so it's pretty easy to defend why, from a business perspective, you have to go all in, because especially with AI, it's exponential. Our minds can't truly even comprehend. And so it's, when you look at geopolitics, et cetera, the Chinese are going to go faster. They're going to beat us. And so, we don't fully, you listen to Sam Altman, some of these leaders in AI, and it's like, they don't truly understand how these models are evolving. And so it does make sense, I think, to pause and make sure that we think about the ethical concerns, the safety, et cetera, contingency plans. But at the same time, it's a prisoner's dilemma thing. It's, game theory. Like, do you wait? If you wait, there's potentially a bigger penalty. Existential stuff. So
I know.
Everybody's moving. So I think it comes, it's complicated, but from a personal perspective, I think, I just look at it as like, try to be ethical, try to be reasonable. And, we're looking at AI and the startup I'm working on for music, and, we're staying away from the generative stuff. But I think, to your earlier point, there's so many things that you could leverage to help people. If you can understand how a studio works, the equipment that you have, the people, the processes, you could, it's not a big leap to then think we can build like an AI assistant that kind of sits on your shoulder and observes things. And it's like, you're micing a drum kit and you're like, oh, what mic should I use in this?
Right.
And it can access the cloud and tell you.
Yeah.
Those are, I don't know, I get excited about that because it helps you then stay in your creative zone and create, versus being caught up in support or complicated issues or having to rely on your memory, which my age gets harder every day.
Absolutely. This is that distinction, though, about augmentation versus replacement of a human function or skill. And I just feel, I mean, again, I don't want to get into ideologies and trying to name what it is to think a certain way or not, but I feel like, if I had to describe my outlook on life or on being, it's as a humanist. I believe that human beings kind of are, because we are humans and we are of this species, we kind of need to pay attention to, like, are we doing the right thing here for us?
Yeah.
And making lots of money or dealing with the existential race against China or whatever, those are all factors. But at the end of the day, you can put yourself out of existence through short-term thinking. And
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, it's like, is this augmenting or is this replacing? So, this week, I had a rough moment because it's pretty funny. I used to work in music tech for a while, and I loved it, and I hated it all at the same time. And that's a whole big discussion on what I loved and hated about. But one of my coworkers is a senior executive at Universal Music Group. Several of my coworkers are. And they're great people who I love and respect and enjoy working with. And I saw one of them post, we just reached a settlement with UDO in our lawsuit against them to enable generative AI for music. And it's a huge win, and it's going to be amazing for everybody. And I looked at that and I was like, brother, do you really believe what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because I don't believe what you're saying. But, I had to stop myself from commenting at all. All I could do was hit the like button for my friend and go, good for you. You accomplished a hard thing that you cared about. But I kept asking myself, like, what's going on now? Like, you have just reached an agreement to pay for this startup who is doing generative music experiments with this technology to make machines that make music, machines that create. And you just kneecapped it.
Yeah.
And then you claim it's a victory for artists that you ain't going to pay any of the money to, that you're,
Right.
Anyway, but I don't want to get into all that stuff. But it was just like, we really don't even know what we're doing right now.
Yeah. I think to a large degree, I'm oversimplifying, but I think to a large degree in business, because of the explosion in complexity, dependency on technology, there's a compartmentalization. So it's disempowering for the individual. And one of the things that does is it makes it easier to rationalize, your contribution into something or enabling something that at your core, maybe you don't believe. Maybe you believe like that isn't the right thing, but the ship's sailing. And the thing I focused on, I have a clear conscience on, but it's like when you combine all of those things, it results in this thing that's hard to stomach.
It is hard. It's hard. But anyway, now that's a whole nother ball of wax. I mean, I guess why we came here today, although this is a phenomenal conversation to keep pulling on, and we will continue to, I'm interested in stories of journeys. I'm interested in how we all get to where we are. I'm interested in tales of people who are walking a steeper path. And I reconnected with you recently after, we worked together in the 90s.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Back
and
in
I don't think I've seen you physically in decades, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because so many people from that building, I think that was building 5 or building 7 we were in back then at Microsoft, from so many people from that dev tools, developer relations world have resurfaced in my life the past few years.
Interesting.
That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is very cool to see happen because there's something that was going on, but we connected around a context of working in tech, right? Yeah. And then I kind of lost track of you, and you probably lost track of me. We went off and did different things. And then this moment in time happened a week ago or two where it was like, oh my God, there's a ton of synchronicity in what we've done in the middle that I didn't really even understand was there.
Well, and it was thanks to your book, because I think, it's when you were kicking off your book preview, and I came across this, and I read, the direction that Breaking Asphalt is going. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is completely in line with my personal journey, especially recently in the last several years. Although my whole life's been.
Yeah, I feel you there. Yeah,
So I'm really grateful that you wrote the book and we came back together, because it's sometimes it feels alone on that road.
Oh man, it does. And it feels alone writing a book about something that you're not sure if many people have experienced or even would find to be realistic as something to even spend time talking about. Because it sounds like such a high-class problem to care about purpose, to care about what you were born to do, to care about doing more than surviving in this very difficult to survive in world.
Yeah.
And to actually take a stand and say, this should be the high order bit. This should be the metric for success. So I when I wrote it, I expect many people to say to me, yeah, that's a very privileged point of view. And it is unrealistic and idealistic. And I'm sure many people will or are when they read about that. But there are some of us who actually did catch that wave and went, hang on a second, wait, rewind again. What is this about? What did I do? So because we connected on that, I found more about your story, and I would love to share some of that with the world, because we need reminders of these stories that are bigger than the few examples we see of people who have achieved greatness in a very public way, or who took a very, rough path. In the book, I share examples because I wanted examples that we could all look to and relate to.
Yeah.
Of people who did this, and you could connect the dots if you didn't even see it. And so, but those examples are people who many people will say they are outliers. They're the 0.001%. People like Pharrell Williams, Oprah Winfrey, Stephen King, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs. These are all people who walked the steeper path to greater goals and changed the world.
Absolutely.
But you did too. It's just people don't know your name. So I want to share some of that story today and talk about some of that. I'd love to learn about, because we, just because we work together doesn't mean we get to sit around and talk. So exactly. I'd love to know where your journey started and how you got to the point where we met in the 90s in Seattle, Washington at Microsoft, in the hallways of a building working on developer tools software. But where are you from? Like where did your story start?
Born in Pittsburgh, about 2 years old. We moved to Ohio, really small town, Tiffin, Ohio. It's in Northwest Ohio. It's like 19,000 people. A great place to grow up, but very simple. I mean, it's still to this day, it feels like you're going back to the 70s, 80s when you go to Tiffin. Safe place to grow up. But I always had this spark. I wanted to kind of see the world and see what I could accomplish. And so as soon as I got to be 18, went to college at Ohio University, and as we're coming up on graduation, I studied business, but I had all kinds of interests. Grew up kind of playing music, a little bit into sports, settled on business. I wanted to do finance was my goal when I was getting ready to graduate. So my girlfriend, my wife now, Erin, we just decided we were going to move to North Carolina when we graduated Ohio University. No jobs or anything. It's just kind of an adventure, right? Mm-hmm. I think a magazine had said it was like the best place to live and work in the U.S. We're like, yeah, let's go try it. Mm-hmm. And before I could get an interview at it was going to be Merrill Lynch. I wanted to be a financial planner. Ended up getting an interview for a sales job at a little software startup, and was offered the job. And I said, yeah, well, let's see where it goes, right? So.
As we do.
As part,
we need a job.
Exactly. As part of that, my dad was in sales. And so it was one of the reasons I took it. I think sales it's kind of a foundational set of skills. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. I know it doesn't necessarily make sense. I was going to be a financial guy, but I also wanted to be a musician. I also wanted to, create something. It's one of the problems with my brain. I've got all tons of interest and curiosity. So, but, the sales thing was good because it's foundational, helps you focus on, what does a person need and translating that need and communication and everything. So in that first job, I, went through some sales training, like did Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. And I really liked it. So in fact, the instructor, named Sig, asked me if I'd come back and help to, assist him in teaching the class. And the reason I raise this is because it was only like 3-4 months into my job, our little startup was acquired by a bigger company. And it was jolting because I remember at the time, it's like our VP of sales. I really like this guy, a guy named Jack. And of course, this new company comes in and they fire him and, all this, deck chairs moving around. And I'm just like, what is this? Yeah. And I mentioned this to Sig, the guy that ran the sales thing. He said, hey, I've got these friends that have this little tiny software startup. And the ironic piece was they made a product. It's called SourceSafe. It's developer tools for software engineers to collaborate on it. And this product that they built actually competed with the company that had just acquired the startup that I was working with. It was like the industry standard and whatnot. So long story short, I interviewed at this little software startup and ended up leaving, the first company I was with. And 6 months later, I'm sitting in Redmond as a product manager for this product. So Microsoft acquired our product, and I went from sales into product management, which was interesting because it's like Microsoft doing the due diligence and of our company. And so I interviewed at Microsoft in some sales roles and everything else, and I met a guy that did what's called program management, all about, right? Mm-hmm. So the guy that he helped kind of facilitate the acquisition of this company. And so he kind of took me under his wing and started explaining, I'm we acquire you guys. I'm going to work with your engineering team, which by the way, we're talking, I think there are 8 of us in this company. It's a little tiny company. There are only 2 of us in sales. And so he kind of planted the seed. He's like, would you be interested in interviewing for product management? And I was like, well, I don't have a fancy MBA. A lot of these guys, went to some pretty big schools and had a lot of really good experience and I sales. And this is part of me. It's like, I can do anything. I'm going to learn about this. And, so I interviewed and landed the role. And so that's what then took us to Redmond, to Microsoft. Anyway, maybe pause there. And
yeah, that's great. That helps me connect the dots. So it feels quite typical for a lot of people in their 20s in that, it's not necessarily super intentional. It was surfing the wave of opportunity. Yes. And so, I myself and many other people I speak to, we all kind of, there's very few people that I talk to who are like, I wanted to be this and I became it.
Yeah.
What did you want to be when you were a little kid?
Man.
Probably didn't want to be a product manager.
No, I wanted to be a pilot. Uh-huh. And then I had bad astigmatism. And so at some point my dad was like, yeah, it's probably not realistic. So that went by the wayside. And then I started following music, always been into music. So I was like, maybe I could be an A&R guy, and just looking at with David Geffen and all this. So that
kind of music did you play? What music instrument did you play?
Well, I started in like the second grade on piano, taught by, a nun.
That's amazing.
Sister Mary Thomas, classical and that kind of thing. And then around the 5th grade, saxophone. So got into jazz and all that. And then in my rebel years, turned about 15, 16, electric guitar, and started getting into heavier stuff,
like heavy metal or like hardcore?
Yeah, exactly. Well, metal and so yeah, I was a big like metal guy. And then when I was 16, I went to visit my uncle in New York City, and he brought me to see. So the thing I wanted to see was Joe Satriani. Joe Satriani, he played on the Pier, like New York City. It was amazing. But he opened up for Stevie Ray Vaughan, and dude, that was life changing. It's like
cracked your mind open.
It completely did. It's just like Stevie Ray Vaughan became like and then we lost him shortly after that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what, 92? But so yeah, my music interests go all over the place, and music's always been a big part. But then when I chose a career thing, it's just I kind of shut down. So it's like, yeah, I've wanted to be all kinds of things.
That's cool.
Entrepreneurship's also been something. It's like I have this desire to kind of look at something and say, like, where's there an opportunity, or is there a problem to solve? And it just engages a part of my mind that I can never scratch the itch. It's just how I'm wired, kind of thing.
This is something I think about a lot that is very under discussed, which is that most people think that this thing I talk about called alignment always manifests itself in a very specific skill that is sort of a noun that people can name. I want to be a musician. I want to be an actress. I want to be a writer. I want to be a doctor. And there are people who have archetypical interest and skills that are easily put into a box. There are also people who are generalists, who are problem solvers, who are natural born communicators, storytellers, teachers, salesmen. They are people who have a skill set that they do and wield with the same beauty, grace, and fluency as a great artist would. But it's very hard to put into a box. And I think a lot of us ended up in tech for that reason, because tech, by the dynamic, fast-moving, ever-changing nature of creating not only a new thing that didn't exist before, but creating organizations that didn't exist before to build them and to maintain them and to grow them, required people who had ADHD, for lack of a better word, that, could hold many ideas in parallel. You do. Okay.
I do have ADHD, yes.
Most of the people I coach have ADHD.
Interesting.
And yes, and it is so prevalent. Neurodivergence in tech is so prevalent that it is almost the majority, in my opinion, from my experience. I would say 3/4 of the people I work with have ADHD, autism, or both. And it's what has enabled them to exist in a space that is tech, right? So when you say, I don't want to rat hole on ADHD being something that defines you or anybody, but when you say that, I wanted to be a guitar playing pilot, spaceman, software engineer, whatever thing, that doesn't surprise me, because what I see is the core thread that runs through everything being the actual superpower, not a single-minded or a single-faceted ability, right? So I had this moment. A friend of mine is a legendary artist, songwriter, and producer, and I was invited to one of his shows, and I was sitting backstage with him, and we were at the Greek Theater in Berkeley. And the Greek had, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people, full capacity show. And we're sitting backstage, and everybody is chanting, pounding the table, waiting for the band to come live. And we're sitting there in his dressing room, and I looked at him and I said, "Man, do you hear that?" And he went, what, those people? I said, yeah. I was like, that's so amazing. Like, I would just once in my life love to hear people stomping their feet and calling my name to do something that they're excited about. That's so amazing. And he went, yeah, I guess it is. I hear it all the time. And I said, yeah, that's pretty special. And he said, yeah. I said, I'd just love to trade places with you once, just to do that. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, man? I'd love to trade places with you. And I went, shut up. Don't try to flatter me. And he was like, nah, I would love to. And I said, why? He said, my whole life, I've only been able to do one thing. I can play a guitar. I can write a song. I can play music. I don't have a choice. This is all I can do. My choices are limited. You're so versatile, man. You can do so many things, and it's taken you to so many places, and you get to work on so many interesting things. Your career is like, and all I do like every night since I was a kid is play till my fingers bleed and go out here and give everything I can. And he was sick. He had a bad cold, and I was like, I don't know how you could go out there. And he pulled himself together and went out and killed it. Mm-hmm. And he was like, that's all I know how to do. I have to pull myself together like that. And in that moment, I was just like, oh, wait a second. Sometimes not just doing one thing well is special. And I never saw myself in that light ever. I never, ever looked at myself and went, the thing that's special about me is I can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's
a powerful story. It gave me an interesting perspective hearing it, because, I think one of the challenges with this, trying to do everything is constant imposter syndrome.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that you talk about in your book, it's how do you get comfortable being uncomfortable? Because that's perpetually what you have to do in order to make progress. Because it's like, you see the new shining rock and you're like, all right, diving in on that. And, it's, you go through those phases. I'm going to forget the scientific terms, but it's where you get a quick, like, oh, I can do this. And then you get you get punched in the face. It's like, yeah, you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. And then that takes who knows how much time, and at the expense of other things. And so then you get the people that are saying like, well, why are you spending your time on this thing? You're really good at this. You've started this. And I'm like, sometimes I can't explain it, but I can tell you that when I look back at my life, it's like some of the moments I'm most proud of are because I wouldn't have even had the idea if I couldn't have combined these things that don't belong together, that inspired me to go a certain direction or come up with something that's somewhat unique. And that's something that's important to me, because I think it gets harder. Everything feels homogenized in this current, world where it's, well, yeah, we won't go back to AI, but it's like the statistical probability that this is the right thing or the most efficient thing. And so then, businesses and everything else, it's like that reinforces that. And again, gets away from the human condition, because humans are messy. We make bad decisions, but that's part of the journey, and it's important. And we have to be able to make mistakes and celebrate those mistakes. And we never celebrate them. It's always about, well, did you make a bunch of money, or did you, anyways,
what was your GPA? What was, there's always some metric, right?
And then what do? We do postmortems after this. And it just reinforces to throw out the things that in hindsight, you wish you wouldn't have done. It's like, no, time out. Like, those are some of the most important parts of the journey that, if you would throw out on the next cycle, whatever else, it's like, you're homogenizing yourself. And, again, there's so many paradoxes in life where it's just like, and oxymorons, things. It's like,
it's all paradoxes.
Yeah.
All the way down, top to bottom, it's all paradoxes, man.
That's sure.
Definitely been a massive learning for me. And holding those two truths in both hands and being okay with that is a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, we're taught to, right, the dualistic thinking. It's the only way that you can kind of stay sane, especially in the formative years. You have to say, this is right, this is wrong, because if everything's gray, you know, it's hard to make sense of the world and build a decision framework and everything else. But I found that, you know, when I learned to have, you know, be able to accept two competing things as both potentially true, it's hard. I have to constantly remind myself, but I find the world's simpler, maybe. I have less anxiety when I can remind myself that, right?
Yeah.
Try not to polarize things. Think of things as truly right, wrong, good, or evil, because the people that are debating those positions, they in themselves don't think that they're, you know, evil or bad. They're going to be able to rationalize their position on things. And so who am I to say that they're wrong or that they're bad? So, but then if everything's just, you know, in harmony, then that starts to, you know, how do you stay motivated, right? You have to have, I mean, if your movie's a film, or if your life is a film, like, would you want to watch it, right? You need to have the villain, you need to have the guide, you need to have the overcoming things, the, you know, the unexpected endings, all those things.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have the hero's journey for an interesting story.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, there has to be these moments of failure and redemption and loss and winning. But, you know, that's a whole nother question, is whether life is meant to be a story or meant to be a way of being. But, you know, we're going to get real philosophical real quick. You know, but coming back to the story of where you got there. So that's where I picked up with you in around 1995, somewhere around 95, 96. Did you stay in software? I mean, I think you were around for quite a while at Microsoft, if I recall.
12 years altogether. Yeah. I had a stint in 2000, right when the internet bubble burst, where I went to a startup, moved to North Carolina. Wouldn't trade it for the world, but boy, you know, talk about getting punched in the face. Went to a software startup that is an Israeli-based company, and save you some of the details. But essentially, I went to be the VP of marketing startup. We were getting ready to IPO, you know, and the moment I joined, you know, we moved cross country. We had a 10-month-old at the time. You know,
I've done that.
Sold our house. Yep, moved cross country. Started to get settled, and let's just say the CEO that hired me was pushed out by a board member, took on CEO. We did not get along, and I learned some good lessons. So I was back at Microsoft 7 months after I took that role. And, you know, but to answer your question, I stayed at Microsoft on and off about 12 years, went from product management into program management, and worked on some really cool things. You know, embedded operating system, so the Windows CE, embedded operating system and tools, web services, et cetera. And then 2007, I think, I went to Yahoo, worked on some cool stuff there. Then went to Disney, ran game platforms for them, so still technology. We moved to Southern California, and then joined Amazon. So we came back to Seattle. So I've moved cross country seven times, I think. And
I'm up there with you.
It sounds like it. Yeah, But so it was big tech for most of my career, and then had some pretty life altering things occur personally. So health scare, 2015. A few years before that, some good life well, they're both positive in the end, things that you go through, but, got into fitness, it's doing triathlons and all these crazy things. And so
let's talk about all that. Let's double click on that. But before we get there, I want to ask you a question. So did you love the tech thing? Did it fulfill a part of you? Did you have a great time? Did you ever ask yourself, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, that was a good run.
Yeah.
You had there, for some of us, we just stay in our jobs that we accidentally fall into, like you accidentally fell into tech, because we don't know what else to do now. And we have a resume in this particular industry. We don't know how to unwind it or back out of it. We don't have contacts in other places. So we just keep doing the thing. For others, it's like, oh, cool. This is like a jungle gym now. I'm inside of this playground. I'm just going to go swing from branch to branch and bar to bar and find cool things that I can do with myself. What was it like for you? Was it the prison of your own making, or was it the jungle gym?
It was a bit of both. And I think that's part of the reason I was drawn to so many different types of businesses within tech and business models and things. But I also struggled with that, because I found that, it was like, I started in developer tools. I'm not a software engineer. I learned a lot through osmosis and things, and I did enjoy, working on that, but it wasn't my core passion. Like thinking about new features for engineering tools or collaboration tools, or even like game platforms. I was a big gamer in my day, but my job, like when I was at Disney, my team was building infrastructure tools for building games so that the games would be more efficient and consistent and things. And that wasn't my passion. And so it was this pull. I wanted to use what I had learned to do something that I was more personally, excited about.
I get it. I as somebody who had a similar story in that I accidentally ended up in tech, I accidentally ended up at Microsoft, found myself sitting in a developer tools world as a non-engineer with zero interest in it. I had to figure out how to turn the jungle gym in the prison into the jungle gym in some ways. It was like, well, I'm here. What do I do now? Let me see where I can find something interesting and shake the tree. And the cool thing about working in a big place like Microsoft in the 90s, it was that it was hyper fast growing and the new businesses were popping up like mushrooms. So you literally could stay inside the same company for 15 years and never work in the same team every year if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Right. You could just move from consumer to enterprise to developer tools to sales to marketing to whatever. I mean, like the place is huge, and so there was lots of flexibility. And that was also the downside, because I stayed there the first time for 8.5 years and I intended to be there no more than 2. So the good thing was that I was able to stay there for 8.5 years. The bad thing was I didn't push myself into places that I could have grown more because of comfort, because the jungle gym was already there and there was some new toys to go play on every 3 months, every 6 months to distract you, Yeah. So it's good and bad, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I found some of the same things. It's I want to go in a certain direction, but then rationalize it, right or wrong. Not that there is a right or wrong, but young kids or
bought a house,
other life decisions we made. Like now we've got a mortgage, and it's easy to be drawn into that, and but I found that for me personally, just it would build in size until I had to do something different and break out of that prison, so to speak. And
so what broke you out? What was it? Was it your health scare that broke you out of the prison, or did you decide to go somewhere else and do something that broke you out? Because you mentioned the health scare.
A couple things. Before the health scare, I'd say it was endurance sports. I was working a lot. I'm sure you can appreciate.
Oh yeah.
And I was totally sedentary. I had gained weight. I didn't feel good. And we have 3 boys, and they were young at the time. And I felt like I wasn't being a good role model. And so long story short, I was like, I have to find a way to get fit. And I had tried running in the past. I hated it. Couldn't do it. Just couldn't stick with it. And we went, supported. I have 2 sisters, and my youngest sister was doing an Ironman down in Oceanside in California. And we went to support her, and dude, it was visceral. You show up, it's pitch black out. There's a bunch of Marines, Camp Pendleton, like setting up the course. And then all of a sudden they turn on the PA. So you're right next to the water. You've got all these athletes dressing up in their wetsuits, putting on the goggles. And it's like a beautiful day from U2 comes out, and some AC/DC. And then they jump into the water. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. And
something spoke to you in that moment.
Absolutely. And then, like you say in your book, I was like scheming. I was like, if I just make this a personal goal, it's never going to happen.
Right.
So I bought a bunch of gear, ended up buying 2 bikes, because I bought this triathlon bike. We don't have to get on this rabbit hole, but like bought a triathlon bike, and then, met up with my uncle to do this 100-mile bike ride in Arizona, and they wouldn't allow you to have triathlon bikes. You had to have road bikes. So I had to buy a second bike. So I invested all this money.
Because of the geometry of the bike or something, or like why?
And safety. It's a time. Triathlon bikes are time trial bikes. So you're kind of in this position where if you're drafting, it's tough to hit the brakes. You could have crashes, all kinds of stuff. So,
but a century ride is an endurance ride, so you've got a totally different. Yeah.
But that investment kind of forced me to stick with it, and then it became almost an addiction. It was like, I started running half marathons and doing sprint triathlons, and then I wasn't a big athlete. And so getting back to the point, like how this helped me break out of jail, so to speak, was mental. It was recognizing that this inner voice, been with me my entire life, spend a heck of a lot of time telling me what I couldn't do and why it didn't make sense. And it was beyond powerful. Like when you cross a finish line and then you're faster and you're going further.
Yep.
And you work through these pain, like where you think there's no way I can finish this, but you do it. Now your brain can't tell you. You can't do that. And, one of my favorite quotes, I think it's Martha Beck, is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yep.
It took me a long time to realize this, but the way that played out when it came to endurance sports is that, it made me realize that I was a better person. I was a better, colleague at work, a better leader, a better follower. I mean, just all of these, it was like the rising tide raises all the boats. And so the triathlon thing, this happened during a transition. So it's like, as I was leaving Microsoft to go to Yahoo, I was kind of in the middle of this journey. I had done a bunch of sprint triathlons and everything else, and decided to do a full Ironman, which is,
wow.
It's like you're swimming 2.4 miles, biking 112, and then running a marathon all at one day.
All in one day.
Yep. So I signed up for this. One of my best friends, I called him up. He had never done one. but it was kind of this camaraderie thing. So we did a lot of training. We'd go, I remember we'd get together like a Friday night, we're drinking too much. And I would look at him, I'd be like, 6 a.m. Starbucks, 15-mile run. He'd be like, yep, let's do it. I mean, it's just that accountability. So it's like it rewired our life and priorities. And it was super powerful. And it was amazing. It was life-changing. And then I couldn't get enough of it. So that became kind of this foundation. And now I'm in the best shape of my life. And fast forward, I'm at Amazon, incredibly stressful position at the time. And was grateful. I had, I was in the best shape of my life and got hit with a health scare. I got this really rare melanoma cancer in my eye, of all things. So the upside of that is, I didn't have to go through, like chemotherapy and, I can't imagine, some of the things these folks have to go through to recover from that. So we had to treat it, flew out to Boston and went through treatments and feel incredibly lucky. There's a high mortality rate for that, but we caught it really early through blind luck. I just happened to go to a doctor's appointment without no symptoms. They saw it, we treated it. And, that's when I had kind of this epiphany where, this inner talk in me was like, David, you've been wanting to do your own thing for as long as you can remember. Mm-hmm. You always have a reason why it's not the right time. Mm-hmm. And so I took this problem based on what I went through is like, when I looked out at the world, sedentary disease. It's like, and before the pandemic, that was the biggest health risk to this country. We're wired for the couch, and now you can do everything from the couch. And how am I going to get people off the couch? And so I decided I was going to leave Amazon and start my own company, and broke out of jail, burned the boats, so to speak. And that was a catalyst,
That was a catalyst. So it was a moment of awfulness. I'm sure it was frightening. I'm sure it turned your whole world upside down. And yet at the same time, it brought incredible clarity to you.
Well said. It's exactly what it was.
I hear this far too often, and I have no judgment for this scenario because gifts come in the strangest forms in this life. But I spend a lot of time talking to people about their paths, their careers, their lives. I work with and walk with people on their journeys as a coach. And the number of people I talk to who share a story of a health scare being the moment that they were finally able to give themselves permission to do what they had been wanting to do for so long is it's almost a cliche. It happens so much. I mean, I have had virtually nobody say to me, man, I woke up one day and just said, life's too short. I have tremendous clarity and perspective. I'm not going to do any of this anymore. I'm going to change everything. I'm going to shake up the whole Etch-a-Sketch of my life before it happens to me. Literally. I don't think I've ever met anybody who told me that. And in my coach training, the founder of the school that taught me about working with people as a coach and guide, he called this an interruption. That human beings are change resistant. We are wired for status quo, as I wrote about in the book. There's a lot of research as to why this is evolutionary biology. We are wired to keep things the same because when we don't, risk comes in. And when risk comes in, when you're a hunter-gatherer living in the woods, bad things happen. Right? Really bad things happen really fast. So we are wired to avoid changing things. And most people do not change unless they have an interruption. And that's basically the metaphorical stick in the spokes of your bicycle while you're going full speed down the road and you fly over the handlebars, and eat pavement. And it comes in different forms. I've seen it comes in people losing their career. It comes in people losing their partner. It comes in people losing their health. And it comes in lots of forms of loss, but it's always unseen, unanticipated, abrupt, and you end up with some pretty bad road rash afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? And then after
Sure.
you pick all the asphalt out and sort of bandage yourself up, there's this sort of like, should I have been riding my bike so fast on this street? Did I even think about what I was doing? And this clarity comes about. So there's a gift in this. There's a wonderful book by a guy called Shirzad Chamine, who is also a coach and psychology thinker who wrote a book called Positive Intelligence. And this came out of a lot of work he did at Stanford, trying to understand the power of positivity on growth, on performance. And they did loads of real neuroscience research, putting people under functional MRI machines, watching how their brains worked in different things. And one of the most interesting things they found in this research is that people who are able to reframe anything as a gift are some of the most high functional and successful people. And anything meaning like including their own death, including, anything being a gift, finding a gift in anything as opposed to finding.
I'm a huge believer in that.
I can tell.
Absolutely. And I think, me personally, I also think the opposite can be applied, where it's like to try to stay humble about the accomplishments and the positive impacts that you have in life, because you recognize that, everything is in kind of in homeostasis. It's like there is no matter how good something is, it probably affects somebody or something in a negative way.
Yes.
And all of the negative things have a capacity to help you in some way. And sometimes, oftentimes, I think, especially with the negative stuff, we need distance to kind of see that. But yeah, I'm going to have to read that book, because I think that'll just reinforce a lot of my own personal beliefs on that.
It's a great book. I've used it extensively as a tool in helping others grow, because it brings real, validated scientific research to something that is quite common sense or folksy, which is that people who are positive tend to do better. Everybody's like, oh, really? Look at this guy. Look at that guy. He brings together a lot of data. And then what stops us from being positive? There's a whole another very, very interesting part in that. And he's even developed an assessment to measure your PQ, because, we had IQ, the intelligence quotient, to measure your intelligence intellectually. Then Daniel Goleman had this groundbreaking book called EQ, Emotional Intelligence Quotient. And that's sort of measuring. They found out that EQ is more important than IQ. And Shirzad's book actually brings forward a new dimension, which is PQ, which is he found out that positivity is even more important than just emotional intelligence. And so he has an assessment that you can do to see where you're at on your score. He's got some really practical tools that I use all the time with people, because it's phenomenal, the difference it makes in just your ability to not just function, but to truly succeed. So highly recommend it. But coming back to your journey, so you got this gift of a wake-up call from the universe.
Yeah.
First in the form of, hey, I'm not living the way I want to live. I'm not healthy. My body does not feel good. I'm not proud of who I am. I want to be better. I want to do something. And you found engagement, alignment, and fuel in running. And you talk about this like very casually, like, oh, and then I decided to do a couple of running, Ironmans and some ultra marathons. But like, this is serious mental and physical accomplishment. And I know so many in the world that we inhabit in professional world, we are surrounded by overachievers, right? We are surrounded by people who do marathons for fun after they do theoretical math on the weekend because they just want to constantly push themselves and prove how hardcore they are. So like when I hear about people running marathons, it's so commonplace almost in certain circles. But most people can't even run down the street, let alone for 26 miles or 100 miles, right? So what did you learn about yourself through that journey of going from I was out of shape and hated running, which I can fully relate to, to I did this thing? Because you're one of many, not a lot, but of a few people I know who later in life, meaning they weren't 18 or 25 when they started this, went from 40. Here to here. Like 40 is a crazy time to me to start running because I would assume that if you want to do something physically demanding like this, you don't start it at 18. I mean, you don't start it at 40. You started at 15, as in track or cross country in high school, right?
Yeah. Well, I learned everything through it. I mean, I'm seriously, I rewired a lot of my beliefs, philosophies, things through the experience and the journey. Mm-hmm. Most of I have this thing, the race itself, the 100 miles that I ran as Zion or the Ironman races, the race itself is a celebration. All the work and all the value is the journey. And it's the people surrounded myself with. It's the things that you had to overcome. It's the celebrations as you start to see what your body is capable of just through repetition. So, like I'm a big fan of the book, James Clear's books, Atomic Habits. Yeah. Just talks about don't wait to be the thing. Just be the thing in the day. Just small steps every day. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the great things about endurance sports is you can measure it. So there's the data component. Mm-hmm. I really got into the physiology of it to understand how the body reacts to things. So things that almost don't make sense, like to go faster, you get more efficient, especially like the long endurance stuff. You want to get your body really efficient at burning fat. Because it's always burning either fat, sugar, like your fast twitch stuff. It's like, your carbs but you only have
coming
a couple
from the
thousand
liver,
calories.
All your glucose, all of that.
Yeah. So that glucose, which is what runs your brain as well. I mean, it'll run out. So if you're sprinting, it's like, so to do the long stuff, you have to get really efficient at burning, fat, et cetera. And, but I found the biggest, return, so to speak, with the ultra marathons. Because I think one of the traps I fell in with the triathlon stuff is it was never enough. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to push the boundary. Like there's a big thing where it's like, if you're elite, you can earn a spot in the world championships down in Kona. And I wanted to be that guy. And I had lots of setbacks. There are entire races I missed because I wanted to go into it, but I have all kinds of other health stuff, back issues and things. Yeah. And so I would get these flare-ups you're right in the middle of a training where I couldn't run at all. I'd go to PT and do chiropractors and all this stuff. And that was frustrating because again, I was focused on the actual output goal, much like work. Right. And so I saw that there was an unhealthy component of this.
I feel you.
This is part of what brought me to this startup was like, I want to incentivize people to take care of themselves, but find ways to make the exercise bigger than them. So we got into this thing of microphilanthropy. So you could dedicate your fitness to a particular charity, bring people in.
Amazing.
But the ultra running became partly a solution to this, because
cool.
that whole culture is not about how fast you ran 100 miles. It's what did you learn out there, and how did you get there? That journey. I made some really good friendships and some great experiences training
That's
for
amazing.
that thing.
I think there's a whole book on this, and I know many people who are runners have written books about running and how it influences their lives. I'm going to pause for a second for us because, and I'll fix this and edit, but I'm going to take a quick bio break because I've been drinking tea here and we've been going for an hour and 15. How much time do you have?
Whatever you need.
We still got a lot of ground to cover, and this is such a good conversation. I don't want to cut it short. So we'll just take a quick bio break or step away, get water, whatever you need, and then we'll come back and pick this up on the lessons where we're at, because there's a lot of good in this.
Sounds great.
All right, I'm having fun. Just give me a minute. I'm just going to keep it rolling. I'll just hit the mute on the mic. I'll be back.
Whoop, not hearing you.
I got to unmute myself. So thanks for that. One of the things that I'm fascinated about, largely from a personal perspective, is you mentioned the body's incremental ability to build and to rebuild.
Yeah.
So, like a lot of people in professional world who don't work with their bodies, I have spent my whole adult life in a chair in front of a screen. Maybe I walked to a meeting, maybe I walked down the hall, maybe I walked around a campus, but largely spent my time in a chair, driving to work, being at work, coming home from work. Everything was in a chair. By the time you come home, you're exhausted. You go back to the chair. Yep. And I think a lot of people who exist in this world lose touch with their bodies and develop narratives about their bodies. And I know I live in the world of narratives as a coach, of seeing them, addressing them, changing them. And I have a personal narrative with my own body that I am just not athletic. There was a period of time when I was young where I did not believe that. But there was a period starting in my, mid to late 20s where that narrative came to town. It left the building, right? Because, and I think, and I'm going to blame this on Seattle a little bit, which is unfair because it's one of the healthiest places with some of the healthiest people in the world. But when I moved to Seattle, I didn't know how to live in the rain. I hadn't heard the Norwegians saying there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. I just knew that it was rainy and cold most of the year, and that didn't make me want to go outside and be physically active. So I became the most unhealthy I have ever been in my life during the 8 years I lived in Seattle. I gained 50 pounds. I developed high blood pressure. I was on antidepressants. And I moved to Southern California and shook the funk off of me. And I think it's unfair to blame it on Seattle, because actually Seattle is a great place to be active and to be healthy. The Northwest is. It's an amazing place to live. But there was a period of time where I locked myself into a mindset that it's, first of all, there ain't nothing to do because it's raining. Second of all, that's not what I do. This is my asset. What's in between my ears. That's why I'm making what I'm making. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I have a brain. And my body is a carrier for the brain. And I've literally heard people tell me, if I could, I would just put myself in a glass jar on a wheelchair and wheel myself around, because I am so uninterested in movement. And that is unhealthy as hell, right? To be so disconnected from that.
But you're not alone, man. That was me until it wasn't, up until almost 40 years old. Yeah. It's interesting is when you look back, even 50 years ago, nobody exercised. You didn't set out to exercise. You didn't need, let me say it differently. You didn't need to exercise. You got enough movement and exercise through the course of your day because of the way the world was. And now we have, most of the jobs are office jobs. You're sitting at a computer, you're sitting on your couch, entertainment, cars, multiple cars in the family. So
moving to the suburbs, out of the cities.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing. It's like being an athlete, that's a choice. And often it's tied to things like you want to be competitive in that particular sport. And that's not what it's about, right? We need to make it so that our bodies support our brains. We're getting enough movement because it's symbiotic. It's the foundation of your health. And, I think that's why it's the biggest health issue right now is because we're not incentivized to go off and exercise and do these things. And it takes time away from the time for our families, other obligations. We're always competing. And what do? We sacrifice for others. And it becomes a million ways to rationalize why you shouldn't take the time to go exercise. And so
it's brutal prioritization. I mean, I feel that squeeze all the time. It's like, right, you have so many waking hours. You're probably going to go to work for at least 8. And if you're in a profession that's called, there's an employment agreement that says you've got to work 40 hours a week, but there's a wink, wink, nod, nod. That's the freaking floor, not the ceiling, brother. Right? That's like,
exactly.
We're looking for 40 hours plus, wink, wink, nod, nod, because if you ain't doing plus, then you probably are not meeting expectations. And that's going to mean you're not going to get anything extra, and you'll probably be managed out. So there's this expectation that you're going to put as many of your possible waking hours into work. And then if you're lucky enough to, in those 50, 60 hours a week, find a partner and have a family, now you've got to find time to not lose that partner because you're constantly working and they become disconnected and lose the bond to you. Or if you have children, to make sure you don't mess them up and ignore them and neglect them. And what's left over is so small, right? There's so few crumbs left at the end of the day to say, you know what? Now that I'm absolutely exhausted, I'm going to go put my running shoes on and go do something that hurts, that makes me feel bad about myself, right? So, like, how did you overcome? Did you have a friend that pulled you through this? Because, like, I think it's very hard for most people to self-motivate through that climb. Talk about a steeper path, man. I mean, like, the 0 to, I can tell you right now, if I tried to run 1 mile, I would be very uncomfortable right now. If I tried to run 1 mile, I would be very uncomfortable. I could do it, but I would feel like something bad's going to happen. Right. And that is not good at all. Right. It's not good. But at the same time, it's also not necessary for me to run 1 mile out of my priority stack. Right. So how did you get past that climb? Because I hear this all the time. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to and thinkers that I'm influenced by is Rick Rubin, the music producer. He weighed 300 pounds and developed a heart valve issue and had to have surgery. That was very dangerous surgery. And he now is very fit, very healthy, exercises religiously, trains with Laird Hamilton, the world-class surfer.
Laird, surfer.
Rick turned his health story around, so much from where he was working at night, sleeping all day, the music business lifestyle, becoming overweight, becoming unhealthy, and becoming, his life was literally threatened, to now in his 60s rebuilding himself. And I look at that and I'm like, how did he do it? He talks about those first weeks of like going to a gym or trying to run again and how hard they were. Yeah. That makes me always look at it and go, that is the hardest part of the journey. Or maybe it's not. What was your experience? Because I think there's other people listening to this who probably are in the same boat.
Yeah. For me, 3 things worked. First was a personal motivation. And I drew on lots of books. There's so many amazing stories about people that got into these endurance sports, had these adventures, etc. The second thing was structure. So I had a coach. I was given some advice early on. They're like, this person who's a pro triathlete, and she recognized, like, I have this insatiable curiosity. I'm trying to, pull together anything I can learn and then apply it to my training. And she said, it's very dangerous. You're going to come up with a Franken plan and you're going to get frustrated. She said, you need one plan. Pick a plan. You don't have to have a coach, but there are plenty of structured plans. So the couch to 5K is a canonical, set incremental and realistic, but hard goals. So run a 5K and get a 5K plan. And if you have a coach, the benefit of a coach is that they can take the emotion out. It's hard when you're looking at the progress you're making or how you're feeling. It's good to have an objective view, just like what you do, with your coaching business. I'm sure that's the value. I hire you, you can learn a lot about me and then do a better job than I can do when I'm emotionally caught up in something.
Absolutely.
So having a coach is great. And then the third piece that helped me is the community. So one time I joined I've joined team for like triathlons. Having those people around helps with accountability. I've also had some close friends that, I go out and train with. And I have one rule, which I try to live by, which has served me pretty well. And that is, if anybody ever invites me to go on a run, a bike, a hike, a walk, anything, unless I absolutely have a conflict, I don't allow myself to say no.
Wow.
My thinking on that is that you say no once, they're going to, they might not ask again. And so it's a powerful thing. Get out there with other people. And I think all three of those things together really helps. You want to stay personally motivated through stories you read. Yeah.
But it does start with the spark, and
absolutely
that sort of, there's got to be an internal motivation, either an interruption of, hey, I'm going to die if I don't fix this. Maybe that comes in the form of a bad doctor's visit or a real urgent critical health moment. Or it comes in the form of something like you look at your boys and go, I don't want to be this person. I want to be a different person. But it starts with a spark, and then you build on top of that. And, I like that. It's an interesting thing what you said about coaching, because I figured there was somebody in there. That's why I was asking about did you have a friend? Did you have somebody? Because you already mentioned your sister being a triathlete, but I don't know if she lived near you or not. Mm-hmm. But
she does not. She's down in California.
Okay. So you were on your own kind of on this journey when you decided to do it.
I was, but that's the thing. Immediately when you put it out there, the community finds you.
Yeah.
So when I started the triathlons, I mentioned I was like going to Yahoo. Mm-hmm. When I went down to California to support my sister, lo and behold, there's this guy, Lawrence, and friend of mine. They both worked at Yahoo, to be clear. And Lawrence was doing the same triathlon. And when we got back in the office, so I was commuting from Seattle down to California every week. And it's a whole nother story, but it was great with the training. I had a lot of time when I wasn't working, just either that or go to a hotel. So I'd go to a pool, I'd run, and Lawrence took me under his wing. And so we'd go out at lunch and run, swim. He took me to a quarry. I learned, put the wetsuit on and do some open water swimming. And he introduced me to people, and it just starts to snowball. And so it's, I think, to your point, you need that spark or that motivation, that thing that's going to get you to do it. And then when you tell the world you're going to do this, that helps with accountability.
Yes.
But it also brings people to support you. One of my best friends who I've done all these Ironmans with and in the 100 mile with as well, he told me some years after, he remembers the day that I told him, because we had been friends, family friends, but I never knew he was a triathlete. And one night I told him, oh yeah, I decided to do triathlons. And he was super supportive, but he told me, he's like, I didn't think there's any way that you were going to follow through on this.
Successfully do it.
Yeah. Cause I lost, I think I lost like 40 plus pounds just in the first 9 months of this whole journey. But Kerry ended up being an important part of, the motivator. He's the one I told you, it's like we'd be at, Friday night having a glass of wine and be like, we're going to get up at 6 and
go run
and do this thing. And I find that there's this, oftentimes our stories, there's this good give and take. Kerry, amazing runner. He ran, I don't know if you follow marathons and things, but like a sub 3 hour marathon is like the holy grail. It's like big, you try for it. And he's one of those guys, but he's a horrible swimmer. Super scared of swimming. When we were talking about triathlons, and his wife Cheryl said, oh yeah, you'll know Kerry because they have safety boat people that follow along in the water, and you just look for the safety boater and see where their eyes are, and there will be Kerry, kind of flailing in the water. So he had done a bunch of sprint triathlons. These are like much, much shorter. And like he kind of stayed in those races because he didn't have any desire to do a 2.4 mile swim in open water. And, but a year of me doing sprints and everything else, I called him up and said, I'm signing up for the Coeur d'Alene Ironman. Are you going to do it? You going to do it with me? And he said, all right. And so he that was huge for him, because he was scared to death of swimming.
Yeah.
And there was that whole journey that we went through. He ended up, the way he overcame that, because he finished Coeur d'Alene and then went on to do a bunch of additional full course Ironmans. And the way that he overcame that was he decided he was going to do his own personal Ironman. So he set the course and everything else. And this particular Ironman let him do laps in a small lake. Still added up to 2.4 miles. And then family came out and, supported it. And it was, he made t-shirts, the whole thing. He was like, I'm going to do this. And that was inspiring to me. And it was a way that we could keep each other kind of, overcoming obstacles, breaking asphalt, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Wow. So cool, man. So many lessons from that. So this experience of entering into this world of understanding yourself at a different level, understanding your mind and your body at a different level, and also learning, like, I would argue that there is alignment in this for you, meaning that you saw something when you saw that race course for the first time. The energy, the music, the excitement, there's something in there that just it spoke to you. It spoke to you at a visceral level.
Yeah.
And that was the spark. And then thankfully your body caught up to your motivation. Like, you had the ability to develop this body to do this. Because if you were all fast twitch muscle, you wouldn't be doing 100-mile ultra marathons or Ironmans, because your body had the hardware to keep up with what you wanted to do. So this was a form of alignment for you. And that propelled you forward. Now, did you achieve world record status and win all the things and all that? No, because there were limits to some of that. And maybe there were, maybe they weren't. Maybe there was no ROI for you to become that person, so you didn't do it. Or maybe it was enough for you, or maybe your body couldn't actually compete at that level, no matter how hard you pushed it, because your genetics weren't that. Because when we're talking about these level of extreme sports, your body matters, your genetics matter, right? Your anaerobic respiratory system, matters. Your muscle composition matters. Your feet matter, right? So, like, this is micro optimizations that lead to being the world's best at anything, right? But if you were to then apply that towards your career, so you have this moment where it's like, wow, I'm capable of doing amazing things. And then you got the wake up call that, hey, by the way, you're mortal like the rest of us. Something could happen that could cause you to lose your life. And you dodge that bullet. What happened after that for you with waking up every day in the morning and saying, okay, how am I going to make money?
Wow. Well, I'll say too, after the health scare, it still took me a couple of years to build the courage to actually leave the cage and leave Amazon. It was 3 years, actually. Yeah. So, once I left, the main motivation was, I thought I knew exactly how start this company, that I'd raise money, it would just all fall into place. And I kind of had mentioned, I burned the boats. I don't mean that I burned bridges with anybody, but I quickly found that all of the time I spent in corporate America, it didn't serve a lot of the needs you have in this for a startup. And so I had to unlearn a bunch of things. And I was combining, we only have so many matches every day to burn. And so trying to get a startup off the ground was taking a bunch of my time, obviously. But I decided at the same time, I'm going to go run 100 miles and I'm going to document that part of the journey. And it's kind of related to this fitness startup. And I'm going to document it all. So now I'm going to become a YouTuber. I'm going to learn how to do, YouTube, and quickly figured out that wasn't smart. I was trying to do too much and I wasn't doing well in anything.
Got it.
I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, I mean, it sounds like that you had a moment where you were ready to go bet on you, and you had to learn what it looked like to do that, because your context was being an employee. And then you decided to become an entrepreneur and you had to bet on you and you had to figure out how to do the thing by yourself, right? The training wheels have been taken off. The infrastructure was no longer there. So I think that's also a very common part of the journey, is that one of my favorite sayings that a friend of mine, I don't know if he got this from somebody else or if he came up with it, but my friend Joel said his favorite saying is embrace the suck. Learn to suck at something new. He always tells me, learn to suck at something new. And it's very hard in your 40s or older to learn to suck at something new, to get everything wrong, to flail, to thrash, to bump into the walls and be clumsy, to be a beginner again. And I hear a little bit of that lesson there, is that you were sucking at something new. And that was part of the journey.
I was. And it kind of came together because it's like I tried to create these, these clear lanes and goals. So at one point I calculated. So I signed up for that 100-mile course, and I realized I had 200 days until the race. So I set a goal. I said, I'm going to launch my company and complete this 100-mile race, and I'm going to document along the way. And fast forward, completed the race, and I had two fears on the race side. One was getting injured, history of injury, and the second was getting lost. I was that kid that everybody kind of joked about, especially my family. They're like, you have terrible sense of direction. And I accepted that. And there's a lesson here I'll come back to. Yeah. So those are my two fears going into this race. And those two fears manifest in the race. Late at night, super cold. I've got my pacer, and his wife, my pacer's wife, was also in the race. And she got hung up in this place. So we're climbing this mountain. It's the middle of the night, super cold. And I decided to stay with them there. She was waiting there, around this fire. And I was like, my inner voice was like, dude, you need to keep moving. You need to keep moving. You have a lot of miles left. And my pacer, he was like, well, I'll go with you. And I said, no, you need to stay here with your wife. And then they're going to continue on, later. But I rationalized in my mind, like, well, if I set out without my pacer, it's pitch black, cold mountain, I'm going to get lost and I might not finish. So I'm going to wait here. And too much time went by. And so it was risking my race. So I just said, I'm going to go. And so I overcame that fear, but it did almost derail. And then with about 5 miles to go in this race, I somehow got lost, and I realized I'm not on the race course. Oh. And I started to panic because we were running out of time. Like, you had 34 hours or 35 hours to complete this thing. And I was coming up on it. So I panicked and I started sprinting, like the endorphins are going and everything else. I found my way back on the course. And as I slowed down, I realized my calf was on fire. I had I had done like 2, grade 2 tears in my calf. So it's like, as the endorphin stuff were leaving my body, I'm limping. And that last 2 miles took me forever, but I finished. Amazing. And I didn't launch the company. So for 2 weeks, I could barely walk, and so I was on my couch, literally and figuratively. So for 2 weeks, I'm just thinking like, like what I trained to do in corporate America. Like, let's do a postmortem. Like, okay, you finished your main goal on the running. You didn't meet your goal with the company. Why? What did you learn? Are there lessons that, kind of could be shared, etc.? And so I wrote, like a day or two, and I remember I'm trapped there, right? If I wasn't hurt, I would have started life again. But now I'm like, I can't get out of mind. I'm like, there's more here. I've got to go deeper. So I started doing just ruminating and writing and journaling and just epiphany after epiphany, existential stuff. Just to kind of summarize this, on the running side, my big takeaways were that if you accept something, like if you accept you have poor sense of direction, that's who you are. So this is a longer story, but
this is I decided about narratives,
to sign up for exactly. And so to fight that narrative, I signed up for a 200-mile ultra marathon. And part of the training for that, and so for a 200-miler, like the aid stations are much, much further apart. You have to be able to navigate and know maps, like know where you're going. So I incorporated that in my training program. So my long runs, I got in this habit of I'm plotting a new course, like on a trails I haven't run before. And then I'm going to find my way through that. The other thing was, again, part of the reflection, as I was training for Zion, I was running with my good friend, Carrie, who knows those mountains. And so what did we do? Anytime we ran together, I'm like, where are we going today? And Carrie would lead. And so I flipped it. So now anytime I would go out and run with friends, I would kind of grab that if offered. I'd be like, yeah, I'll lead.
I'll take it.
And so
I'll make sure we get home safe.
Yeah. So it's recognizing that it's in your power to be who you want to be. And you just need to first believe that you can, and then build a plan for that. And then on the business side, a lot of self-reflection about, am I doing this for the right reasons and everything else? I decided it was, and I moved forward. That business didn't end up working out, but now here I am. I'm working on another new startup now in the music space. And I learned everything I learned with that fitness startup and the microphilanthropy, because it was actually 2 companies. I started a nonprofit and a tech startup. There's a whole set of lessons there about, rules I wouldn't break again or won't break again when building a startup. It may be a good reason for some of these rules.
Yeah. But that's the joy of it, is that you did it. You tried. Yeah. You learned. You didn't stay stuck. You didn't sit still. And I see, again, my own confirmation bias, but I can't help but see it everywhere. Once you see a truth, you can't unsee it. I see this alignment coming back. What are the 2 things that you have bet on yourself with? The 2 things that are the most burning passions for you. Running, exercise, competing, fitness, and music. 2 very strong themes in your life that power and pivot you into this new direction, creating something on your own. right? And that to me,
Yeah.
I can't help but believe that you will keep iterating on this the same way you iterated on your body and on your mind to be able to run a 200-mile race. You will continue to iterate on this with other work you're doing in your life to get there. Because this is not work. This is joy.
Yeah.
That is there. So tell me about what you're building now. What's the second act in post corporate life work going to look like? You mentioned music.
Yeah, working on a startup called Audira. And, just to set this up, over the pandemic, I found this happened to a lot of people. Over the pandemic, I took the opportunity to re-engage with music. And up until this point, I'd mostly, played an instrument, never focused on songwriting, certainly not recording and producing. But with these digital audio workstations, so software, it's basically digitized these analog studios. So the barrier to entry now, it's like non-existent. And I didn't know a lot of this world existed. I was clueless. And so when I got exposed to it, I was like immediately diving in both feet and looking at, what are the challenges as I'm coming up to speed on this. And it's kind of interesting. It's like life does a full circle. When I mentioned the startup I was at that was acquired by Microsoft, it was collaboration software. Basically think about it as like the precursor to GitHub for if people, I don't know how much of your audience knows developer tools, but
yeah, it's a tool to let programmers work together on a single project and control what they are building so that they don't step all over each other and erase each other's work and create errors. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things I saw when I was getting into the music was, wow, they don't have these tools for collaboration. They help people collaborate to bring it together. And on top of that, so much of what goes into the music is not captured anywhere. So it's limiting for the creative. It's probably less limiting when you're a world-class producer. You've got your lane. You know what you're doing. But there's, with the democratization of making music now, you've got millions and millions of potential veteran producers that are trying to get their bearings. Like, how do I combine gear? What gear do I need? And all the way to the consumer. Like, consumers wondering, like imagine if we had more of an IMDb for music, to where I could learn about what gear, what instruments was used in this production, right. Who was a producer, who was the engineer, what kinds of techniques did they use to get that sound?
Yes. What mics? What was
that's
the
what we're doing with
the mics?
Audira.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's it's like there's so many, technical challenges and things that get in your way of, again, the creative process. And so, interesting, about a year ago, a friend of mine from Microsoft, we were catching up. I was telling him how I'm big into music now. And he's like, oh, I need to introduce you to this guy. He's a Grammy award-winning guitarist, audio engineer. He was in Nashville, LA, all these places. And he had started a company called Patrat. And essentially they focused on serving professional audio engineers. Because when you're using all this analog gear, it's still analog. So how do you capture all the settings and configurations and document all of that to archive it? And so that was their gig, and starting to digitize that, bring it to the desktop. So anyways, we met, and what was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation turned into a 5-hour conversation. And we were both just riffing on it. Oh my gosh, there's so many problems and opportunities, and both of our backgrounds are so complementary. Because one of the problems I encountered was I have all these ideas, but very little network. So I couldn't validate them. I didn't know if my ideas were good or bad or in between. And so overnight, this guy, Chris Henning, became a close friend. And now we're, co-founders in Audira, just super early stages.
Amazing.
But, we spent the summer prototyping, building some proof of concepts and getting ready to launch this community where we want to bring people in and help tell the stories behind the music. And, as we collect and centralize all that data, so it's like leveraging my skills from like Amazon. At Amazon, one of the things I did was worked on what we call browse. So it's part of the search org, but it's like, how do you create a taxonomy, an ontology? Think of it as like an information architecture to organize tens of millions of products. And music's very similar. We're one of the things that's going to be the foundation of our company is to build an ontology for music. So organizing the gear, how it's configured, the talent, the processes, having a digital version of this, so you can track what pieces of software you've access to, how they're combined together to create a piece of music, and it just opens up tons of opportunities for the ecosystem. So, again, I think one of my biggest challenges is I've got to just temper my enthusiasm, focus on kind of that proverbial beachhead, right? Solve one problem, attract funding, grow, and
get to product market fit with
see
one
where it
problem.
goes. So
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That was the biggest lesson I learned from my first thing. It was, I think if I could, I think the reason it was Shift Fitness, my last company. And then at this nonprofit, if I could point to one thing I would do differently now in hindsight was focus on one problem. I encountered the thing was it a fitness app or is it like a charity app? And I'd be like, it's both. And this is how it works together. And then I'd lose people because they couldn't see through that. They needed to have that single point of reference. So
that's a whole nother show on building products
exactly.
that work for people. But I feel you on that lesson. And I think it's a life lesson too. It's the value of focusing on one problem and working it through to completion before we take on 10 others is actually a life lesson, not just a business lesson. So, it's, there's a lot of depth to poking on that one. So now you've done this, you've learned, you've done one thing, you learned things, you're pivoting to a new thing. You're trying to create and bring something new to the world again. Do you love it? Is this something that you find hard to do?
I love it. I mean, sure, but that's the point.
That's the point.
If it wasn't hard, it's not worthy of my time, right? And I wouldn't change it, man. It's like I absolutely love what I'm doing, and excited to see where it goes.
Could anybody ever bring you back to your old life again? No. That tells me something.
And it's no chance.
No chance. I can relate. The reason I asked that question is that a couple of weeks ago, somebody asked me, hey, how do I know? Is there like a good test or question I could ask myself to know whether I'm doing the thing I should be doing, whether I'm aligned in my work or my life? And it was actually something I had never thought about. Is there a single question or a single metric for this idea of alignment? And I thought about it for a minute and I said, actually, there is a single question. Does work feel like work? And they were like, huh. I said, because I can tell you, work doesn't feel like work for me anymore. Work feels like breathing. It feels like living. It feels like fun. It feels like engagement. There is effort involved. Don't get me wrong. There is effort. There are challenges. There are difficulties, but welcome to being alive. The difference is the inertia. The inertia that you feel to spin up your ability to show up every day and work. And I spend a lot of time with people in my life, in my family, with my friend group, with my clients, who literally the showing up is 80% of the battle, right? People say that, oh, showing up is half the battle. No, showing up, if showing up is the bar, we got our priorities all wrong, right? Like, because that means that's a real canary in the coal mine thing for me. Like, oh, I showed up today. I'm like, yeah, I breathed today. My heart beat today. Am I proud of myself for that? That's table stakes, right? If showing up is an accomplishment because of the inertia you are carrying to exist, because the people you work with don't make you happy or worse, are toxic or harmful, if the work you're doing is not interesting, if you're confused as to what's expected of you or feel out of control in terms of your ability to influence outcomes, that's not a life well lived. You're not going to be successful when showing up requires this much effort, right? So I love for you. I'm very happy for you. I'm ecstatic for you that you are at a place in your journey where you wouldn't go back because you see that the inertia is so high. Now, there's a whole bunch of practicalities about getting here, right? You had to make some good decisions along the way to be able to do so, right? You had to be able to financially exist in a world that you were trying to create something new in, right? So I don't want to oversimplify this, but most of the people who I speak with and listen to are professionals who have been earning at a reasonable amount of, mid to high incomes, and they, have the ability, if they choose to do something other than what they are doing, but they don't. They still don't. And on the flip side, I see people like, if we look at the greats of tech, one of the first times I noticed alignment was back when we were at Microsoft, actually. And I'm sure you had the same experience. You go back home to the place where you came from and people are like, wow, you got a job at Microsoft. That's amazing. Have you met Bill Gates? And I was able to say, yeah, I've been in the room with him a few times. I've been to some reviews. I've done some keynotes with him. And, he's not my best friend or anything, but I've been around him. Like, what's he like? He was the richest man in the world at the time, remember? He was he was a god, right? He was a god. He was changing the face of humanity. And people said, there's got to be something special about him. And the answer I always gave them was, he is the biggest nerd I have ever met in my life. And they're like, that's a shitty thing to say about that man. And I'm like, no, that's why he is the richest man in the world, because he is literally the biggest nerd I've ever met in my life. He is born to do what he is doing. He finds immense joy and satisfaction in everything he does. Like, I've never met somebody who was so competitive, so intelligent, so eager to learn, so eager to push people hard, so eager to fight, so eager to create, to dream, to push. I mean, and he was already rich as hell. Most people, if you ask them, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you stay in your job? 98% of them that I'd ask that question to, they say, oh, hell no, I'd be out. You ask Bill that, he had already won the lottery. He's still staying in this job.
Yeah.
Right? Bill is still grinding every day.
Absolutely.
Right? I know people a friend of mine worked for him at Breakthrough Energy, at his new energy company. Right? This is 30 years on from when we worked with him. And he's like, still doing the same stuff. He's still walking around with an LL Bean bag full of books. He's still grinding and insatiably curious and pushing himself and traveling and meeting with people and trying to crack the code. Right? So like Bill is Bill
Exactly.
because he was born to do what he's doing. And I can't help but think that if you and I get a little bit closer to that, we're going to end up being the best versions of ourselves. We may not be the richest man in the world. We probably won't be. But we may be the richest version of ourselves.
Couldn't agree more. I have no desire to ever retire. It's
same.
I always want to be doing something to learn, to develop, to explore. I hope I get to a point where I don't have to care about money. Like that's definitely not the case right now, but it causes me stress and anxiety. It's definitely, I made some pretty big trade-offs.
You bet.
And sacrifice because you're right. I mean, I feel very grateful that I have the opportunity to do this based upon, the compensation I had prior, but, I couldn't be doing this because I didn't succeed with my first startup.
Right.
And, I could have, and lots of people said, just go back to corporate.
Yeah.
And, we had some long talks with my wife and we've made some trade-offs. We sold our house, sold off things that don't matter, a lot of cars and things. And so the anxiety melted away a little bit. And, I think it was a good trade-off, but,
yeah, we don't always get to have our cake and eat it too. And, trade-offs are an important thing to be prepared for when you decide to walk on the steeper path, because we most of us don't get to have our cake and eat it too. And
I almost think it's impossible.
Yeah,
it's like you can see where I'm going, right? If we had tons and tons and tons of money in the bank and really didn't have to work, I might just be like, I'd probably be making music, but I wouldn't be necessarily working on a startup. I mean, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just that where you are, the conditions all serve, a particular path. And if you change a major variable, like you get your proverbial cake and you can eat it, well, it's like, well, what's the motivation to eat it?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to pick on
that exactly.
No, I get it. But I get it. The whole point about like, if you had the resources, you may not try to do something bigger. And I don't want to pick on this man because he was an important and good man, but Bill's co-founder, Paul Allen. So Paul loved music as much or more than we did. Paul really loved music. And Paul was very, very rich. And I didn't really realize this, but when I was working in the music business, I was at the studio of another artist, producer, songwriter guy who's been around for a long time. And he kept talking about his friend Paul. And I was like, my friend Paul's taking us here. My friend Paul's doing this. We're going to do this with my friend Paul. And I'm like, which Paul? Paul McCartney? And he's like, because he actually was friends with people like Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. And I was just like, he's like, no, Paul Allen. And I was like, Paul Allen, the Microsoft guy? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, he's got his own 757 and we're all going to go to Italy next week. And me and Mick Jagger and Bob Dylan and this and that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, yeah, he's flying us all to Italy to this estate he has, and we're all going to go play with him. I'm like, he's paying you money to go play with him in Italy, and he has it on his own plane. And he was like, yeah, he just wants to jam. He just wants to play music with us. And he pays for it all. And I was like, that's crazy. I didn't know you could buy your way into jamming with Mick Jagger and Bob Dylan. But, you know, I guess everybody's like, hey, man, you got a rich friend who wants to ball, you know, he's going to do it. But I was blown away at that. And then I found out he had this yacht with a recording studio. I knew he had this big yacht because he had it in Seattle, anchored there, like moored there.
I remember that.
And on the yacht was like a $10 million recording studio. I didn't know this. And he was...
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had a recording studio in that yacht, and he would invite all these artists to come and record with him. Now, I just want to know where that music is. I want to know, like, what happened. Like, was any of it any good? Like...
Yeah. One of my favorite jazz albums of all time, Oscar Peterson, For All My Friends. It was like 4 CD set, and it was a similar thing. It was like, I think of Baron or something in Germany. And he hired Oscar and I think it was a trio of them to come in and record this music. And he wanted to, you know, participate in it, but he funded it, and it was just amazing. And it's, you know, that stuff kind of fascinates me. You know,
it's amazing.
Cool.
And then at the same time, the reason I brought the story up was not to just name drop, but like Paul had all these resources and loved music. Did he build a music startup?
Yeah.
Did he solve any problems with that music?
Right. No.
I mean, no disrespect, the man deserves to live the life he worked hard, but like it sounds like he just had a lot of fun playing rock star, and maybe that's what he needed.
Yep.
Right. He didn't live very long. He passed away, you know, a few years ago. He battled cancer.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's what he needed.
Yeah. But that reinforces it. It's exactly my thought. It's you know, if you have a bunch of resources or things that take pressure off of a particular direction, then it decreases the likelihood you take that particular direction. So I think it's good to have constraints.
Creativity builds constraints.
One of the main, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the other way around.
There's so many cool conversations we could have here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is good, man. So, you know, just to kind of wrap the conversation, because we've been talking a long time, but if I could give you a magic wand or a genie with 3 wishes, what would be the perfect outcome from this work? For your life, for the world, for yourself? Just dream a little bit.
I want to have a legacy and help people tap in to their own purpose, tap into that creativity, their health, find their path, you know, and if I can play some part in that kind of indirectly, you know, the benefits of software and building systems, like you can scale it. That would be my wish is to build something that helps people in this modern time, you know, where we're inundated with technology and it's hard to find purpose, and help them look inward and join communities to express themselves in ways that they find meaningful and can contribute to others.
I love it. You just took the first step towards it happening by saying it out loud.
Oh, I got chill. Appreciate that.
Get the chills, but you did. That's
going to make it happen.
You know, nothing comes forward if we don't ask for it, if we don't state it out loud, if we don't step into that. You know, I'll get all woo-woo for a second here, but there's a million gazillions of quantum possibilities for every moment of our lives, and they cannot emerge if we do not speak them out loud, if we do not take action towards those possibilities, if we do not step onto the path with an action, right? So when you speak it out loud, you've just opened a portal for that to come true. Some people call it manifestation. I just call it, putting yourself in situations where possibility can happen.
Love it.
I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk. I feel like we could talk for 4 hours and keep going, and I'm sure we'll talk more in the future.
Likewise.
But I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your journey, everything that went with it. And I want to hear where it goes. We should check in again and do another one of these and see what's happened with the new baby you're incubating right now. And I can't wait to see both as a musician and creator, but also as a person who wants to tell these stories. Can't wait to see where it goes.
I appreciate it, Lenn.
Yeah. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. All right.
The steeper path, the climb I choose, leaving comfort, nothing to lose. Through shadow trails and rocky ground, my purpose clear, my meaning found. Each step I take brings strength anew. Challenges faced, resilience grew. A journey tough, but richly sweet, where soul and life's alignment meet. At peaks ahead, the vision clear, my greatest goals becoming near. The steeper path, though hard and slow, is where my truest self will grow. The steeper path.